Welcome back to No Trade Clause, live from the SBC studio at the 2021 Las Vegas Summer League. As we continue to cover the biggest stories from around the league, we're joined in studio today by Bobby Marks, ESPN insider and former assistant general manager of the Brooklyn Nets, during which time they were able to reach the NBA Finals twice. Bobby, thanks so much for taking the time out. How's the offseason treated you so far?
Off-season's been busy. Yeah, I feel like we haven't had much of an off-season just based on starting last November with the draft and free agency, and kind of rolled right in, and hopefully we'll get a little bit of a time off before training camp starts in the end of late September. I mean, it's going to be here. It's going to be here pretty quick, but all in all, it's been a free agency was over in about 3 or 4 days, somewhat. So, but yeah, it's been a good off-season so far.
Awesome.
Yeah, do you find yourself busier on the team side or on the media side, do you think, this time of year?
Yeah, probably the media side, just because it's a constant as far as just keeping up with the league, where on the team side you're just really worried about New Jersey or Brooklyn as far as your main focus, where for me it's all 30 teams as far as their different situations, certainly from free agency, and then kind of what to look forward when we get into next season, some storylines here, but yeah, I mean it's a little bit different though, because kind of the ebbs and flows. Once training camp starts in late September, it doesn't affect me as much as unless players are getting waived. Certainly when the rookie extension deadline in mid-October, that is an emphasis. But once the season starts, it's kind of really just analyzing games, watching games, and then kind of going from there.
For sure. So, speaking of, covering all 30 teams and the the workload that is, the sheer workload, you really are a machine, just in terms of the content that you're putting out, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, and even I saw you started up TikTok recently. So, you're very tapped into all the stuff that's going on. How do you manage it all? What's keeping you moving? Is it just gallons of coffee, or how do you get through it all?
Yeah, I mean, first I enjoy what I'm doing, right? I think that's the biggest, that's the most important thing. If I didn't enjoy it, it would be kind of a little bit of a drag. I think when you work from home, you certainly have to have structure, and you got to be motivated. I am a one-man machine, I guess. There's nobody, I don't have any interns, I don't have anyone, I'm my own researcher. As I said to somebody a week ago, like my 2022 off-season probably starts now. I'll start working on next year's off-season. But yeah, I mean, I'm old school. I update my cap information on Excel. I add all the information myself by manually. I write, certainly the articles, when I do my off-season articles, when teams are eliminated or during the playoffs, that's a process. It takes me probably 2 days just to write one team, just because I want it to be fresh. I don't want it to the reader to be like, I just read this last year. So it's 30 articles. I think it's 65,000 words I wrote this past year. And then also, certainly when the draft process starts, that's another animal to kind of tackle with. But it's just kind of keeping up and pacing yourself, not to try to get everything done in one day. I'm not big on delegating, so I like to handle it all myself. And but when you love what you're doing, you'll deal with some of the long hours during free agency. Like, yeah, I mean, I slept 2 hours average, and then especially when I'm up in up in Connecticut and I'm doing TV, that's another element to it, right? So when you're doing midnight Sports Center and you have to be back at 7 a.m. and then you also have to write, it's a grind. But then at the end of the day, like when September comes, you're not doing some of those things. I just enjoy what I'm doing. That's kind of how I keep myself motivated.
Yeah, I mean, there's 5 of us, and we manage our website and we do our best to cover as much ground as we can. The fact that you're on your own, like, it's really incredible. But
yeah, and for anyone who hasn't checked out Bobby's off-season articles, they're fantastic. You obviously prepared them in advance and updating them as you go. So as soon as the team was eliminated, within like 10 minutes, that was published, available to the public. And Those are awesome and super thorough.
Yeah, and it helps me, when I'm talking about players in free agency. So if I'm writing about the Clippers off-season article, certainly with Kawhi and Reggie Jackson. So when Reggie Jackson signs in L.A., I wrote about that. They only had the early bird exception, right, to go sign him. Or when, with Kawhi, with his player option, we kind of wrote about all those different things. So when it actually happens in real time, I'm not scrambling to kind of figure out, okay, what are the different options? I've already written about it there. So that just prepares me. It's a grind because I'm not a writer by trait. I'm not Zach Lowe or Brian Windhorst or Woj, certainly people who went to school to study that. I didn't start writing until I guess 5 or 6 years ago when I started with Yahoo. So those articles give me anxiety because I'm like, it's trying to. Some teams are a little bit more challenging, but I get through it. I think the content has gotten a lot better. We've added, certainly this year we've gone Instagram. We've added these Instagram videos, and the goal for these was really just to kind of, let the viewer kind of, either be in the front office or, explain the cap from the layman's simple terms, right? So if people want to know where the luxury tax money goes to, and we can kind of explain, or recently we've been doing when contracts have been coming in, and just kind of explain what's in the contract, how it impacts teams, and just kind of have some fun with it.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I love them. You definitely can't tell that you're not a writer by trade. So kudos to you. Bobby, we want to jump into some of the moves this offseason.
Yeah.
Some were great, others maybe not so much. But based on your front office perspective, but also your understanding of the cap and salary value, which contracts did you find to be the best in terms of value for the team?
Well, I certainly like the Reggie Bullock contract in Dallas, especially when it's a third-year partial. I thought there was especially they had some limitations with prioritizing Tim Hardaway Jr., bringing him back, and it kind of fills a need as far as a big kind of a big wing.
Yep.
I like Kemba on 2 years, $20 million compared to 2 years, $74 million.
Yeah.
So for that number basically it's almost kind of like the mid-level exception. I like that. I like, what New York did was, they didn't get a lot of headlines because they brought a lot of their own players back, and certainly they added Evan Fournier. But they just have a lot of these contracts. It's continuity, but they have a lot of tradable contracts down the road if they want to do a deal. And I thought the Randall extension was a good number, 4 for 117 when you've got the bonuses that are that in there. Patty Mills for the tax mid-level is a steal for Brooklyn. Gives you insurance with Kyrie. From a team standpoint, I liked what Charlotte did. I kind of, Mason Plumlee at the draft, you get him into cap space, and he's got a 2 years, $16-17 million. You didn't have to go over and spend 4 years, $40 million on a center.
Right.
I liked what they did in the draft with Book Knight and Kai Jones. Certainly, losing Devontae maybe hurts a little bit, but you're kind of content where you are with your, kind of with your guards. Kelly Oubre, 2 years, 24, and the second year is partially guaranteed. So I thought Charlotte did a nice job. The challenge comes with the Eastern Conference is so much better, right? So if you're New York and Charlotte, you're probably going to be better. But I don't know if Charlotte goes from a play-in team to now a top 6 team, or even New York stays at 4. So it's hard when you're building these rosters. I always say that it's the honeymoon period, right? The offseason is the honeymoon period. Everyone loves their roster until you get to training camp or your first preseason game, and you're looking at it and you're analyzing. You're like, whoa, this is not as good as we thought it was. And so those are some of the some of the signings and some of the moves that I thought should earn high marks.
Most definitely. Another one I think that you clarified recently as well was the Zach Collins deal.
Yeah, last night. I was flying over Lubbock, Texas when I did it, I think, when I got an email. Yeah, and that's it. And I said it when I did the Instagram video this morning was we overreact sometimes when contracts come in, right? Like 3 years, 22 for Zach Collins. The guy didn't even play last year. What is San Antonio doing? And but when you look at it, the first year's guaranteed $7 million, and there's partial for year 2 at 50%, so it's like $365, and then the third year's non-guaranteed. And it's a great contract,
Yeah.
and it's a great contract for him. He gets $10 million guaranteed, and he was out a year, maybe even more than a year. And if he gets healthy and plays like he did in Portland before he was injured, that's a great deal there.
Yeah.
So we sometimes, and it's hard too. I mean, the public, when contracts come out, at least for me, I'm not calling the team or the agent on the spot. When a contract comes out, it's, hey, is there partial, blah blah. We're gonna go with a projection, right? And then when the contracts eventually come in, and then we'll maybe reevaluate as far as where they were. Like, T.J. McConnell and Alex Caruso, there's partials on the last year, in the fourth year. So not as, dire. Daniel Tice, another one. Like, it's not as ominous as you think when it comes out.
People love overreacting to those.
Oh,
New
my
York,
goodness.
everyone was like 3 years for all those guys.
And then
4
they got
years?
team options on
Yeah,
it.
and then it looked a lot nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when right when I first saw Zach Collins' figure, I literally replied, tweeted, and was like, "Yeah, Priority Sports won day one."
Well, yeah, I mean that's the big thing too, is that that's why Mark Bartelson's one of the best, is that he kind of knows what the number is going to be, and he realizes what the market's going to be, and he's not going to say, well, let me think about it, let me go back, because if you think about it and go back, that deal might not be there.
For sure. So we touched a little bit about some of the deals that have currently gone through, but obviously the looming thundercloud over it all is Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
So he's still got $146 million guaranteed over the next 4 years. There are been some rumors that he's severing ties with Philly right now, cutting communication. Do you think that Daryl Morey and the Philly front office has handled everything correctly so far? Do you think they should continue to wait, get into the season? What are your thoughts with Philly right now?
Well, I would say that unless you're Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, some of these top level players, that every player in this league is tradable. It's just a matter of what you're willing to give up to get that player. If you're Philadelphia, is what is enough for a player that's 25, I think, or 26. He's got, $147 million left, is in the prime of his career. And, yeah, there's some flaws, certainly offensively, but it's still one of the prime defenders, out there. So I don't think there's a self-imposed deadline. I don't think there's, it's a training camp type deadline where this guy's we're basically just going to take the best offer. He's not on an expiring contract. So I think it's just a matter of kind of what the expectations are going to be with him, how much better he's improved. So my expectation is that the likelihood is that he's in training camp when we get going, and he'll have to deal with certainly Philadelphia fans are ruthless if you're not playing well, and he'll probably hear that in the beginning. But for me, it's kind of in a wait and see mode regards to that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays out, because some of the trade rumors that were spilling out were pretty outrageous. Like, the Philly's looking for a lot, but I guess you start high and then you work from there, right? Moving on to another player, what are your thoughts on the Kevin Love situation? Do you see a potential buyout? He's got $31 million guaranteed this year, $29 million guaranteed the following year. Quite a big contract still out there. Do you see a way out for Cleveland on that?
Well, it's just a matter of how much they would want to give back. I think from a trade value standpoint, I don't see that contract movable. At least you might have to give up something, and I don't know if you want to give up a first-round pick to just get off it.
Yeah.
It would have been great for him to play for Team USA to kind of showcase himself that he's healthy, and unfortunately we didn't get to see that. I mean, we saw with Kemba in Oklahoma City, he gave back $20 million of the 74 that was owed to him at the time. So if you're Kevin, are you willing to give back 15 to 20 million of the and take net 40?
Yeah.
Maybe go the Blake Griffin route as far as in that direction to kind of restore your value. I think Cleveland's interesting just because they're not a free agent destination. So are you willing to take on that $15 to $20 million cap hit per year and really focus on Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and players like that?
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting. Another thing, situation that we'll have to watch over the next year or so, are players like Bradley Beal and Damian Lillard. If they were to become available, which teams do you think, based on cap flexibility and maybe the assets that they have available, would be in the best position to acquire one of those two guys?
Well, I would say they're little bit different because I think Lillard, certainly under contract for the next 4 years, got a player option on that fourth year. So whoever trades for him knows he's going to be there for at least 3 years. It's not a rental. So it's somewhat similar. When we traded for Darren Williams in New Jersey, just based on we were never in a position to go out and sign a marquee free agent with cap space. We wouldn't have been able to get a Darren Williams. So if you're one of these, if you're a Minnesota, teams like that, that have, maybe draft picks and young players and, does it make sense going after, this is probably more for like Ben Simmons. Lillard, you will probably have to get a James Harden type package as far as return. Beal, on the other hand, could be a free agent. So whoever's trading for him, if he ever became available, you better have a comfort level that you're going to be able to re-sign him.
You're right.
That's the reality as far as how much you want to give up.
For sure. And, in a lot of these packages, in the James Harden package, and, a lot of packages involving marquee players like that, first-round picks have to be in there, and they have to be relevant first-round picks. So looking at past deals that have come through, you could really see the evolution of how a first-round pick is valued. From your perspective, what do you perceive a value of a first-round pick to be right now, and how has it changed, let's say, in the past 2 years or even 5 years? What do you think?
Yeah, I think anytime you have unprotected ones coming your way, I think that's got value because you don't know, what's going to, if there's a Kawhi Leonard injury, for example. I think what, the picks Houston has from Brooklyn, certainly if all three sign extensions, probably devalue a little bit based on the protection, maybe 2026, but at least in 22 and 24 is not as high. We thought, that Heat pick that they owed Oklahoma City that was unprotected this year, like there was a point this year where we were thinking, man, this is going to be like a top 6 pick, top 7 pick, but they kind of turned it around. So it's hard when you're trading futures and there's really no name to it, right? There's kind of the unknown. In New Jersey, the year I think the year we traded Kenyon Martin in the sign-in trade to Denver, and we wound up getting, I think, 2 or 3 first-round picks. And one of the picks was an unprotected first from the Clippers. And we thought we were sitting on a gold mine, right? like they hadn't played the playoffs, and they wound up making the playoffs, and it turned out to be the 27th pick in the draft. So I think I think it's great to have them from a currency standpoint, but I think to bankroll that's how you're going to build your roster, you might get in a little trouble there.
Would you say protections have become a larger thing in the past few years? Sure.
We've seen all different ways to do it. Certainly top 3, top 4. We've seen teams protected 8 to 14, right? And then, if it's anywhere in between there. So rarely do we see, picks that are going out, unprotected. I think you've certainly seen teams more aggressive. Chicago's been more aggressive as far as trying to take a little bit of a win now approach, but putting modified, protection on that. So, yeah, I would say we probably in Brooklyn we probably set the bar as far as not to leave picks unprotected. And I think a lot of it has to do with sometimes, when you work in a front office, there's a little bit of a sense of arrogance, confidence. Hey, we always think we're going to be good, but when you change course and maybe you don't spend as much, or maybe you have a free agent that leaves, when you don't leave them protected, man, there's no safety net for you there.
That's true. Got to be prepared just in case. In the past few years, we've also seen this new evolution of free agency with something that's being coined pre-agency. Players under contract who express their interest of being traded, and I feel like they almost hand-pick their destination as well. We saw it with Anthony Davis, saying, yeah, I pretty much want to go to L.A. It happened with Harden, Paul George, now might happen with Damian Lillard. When everyone knows how difficult it is to reacquire a superstar, why do teams give in when these players still have multiple years left and ask to be traded?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's different when you're on an expiring, right? And you think you're going to lose that player outright.
Right.
As far as a player that's got 3 years left, I think there is a point where you kind of draw a line in the sand here. If you could set the precedent that anytime a disgruntled all-star wants to be out, you just trade him. You trade him to trade him. Some of it, though, is up to the front office. I understand that, it's not a great situation for you. But if you've had a player like certainly New Orleans with AD there, and you were there 7 or 8 years, or if you're Lillard, you do have there's like the 10-year window where you can build something really good. It's not like Zion wants to leave after his third year and on his rookie contract. That's a little bit different there. But yeah, I mean, there has to be somewhat of a line in the sand. I think from a front office stand, unless that player just becomes a total pain in the what.
Yeah.
Then it maybe forces your hand a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so we just touched on pre-agency, and all the pre-agency stuff that goes on. It's starting to, or I should say, continuing to bite certain teams in the butt. Specifically this year, Miami, and then Chicago. So these are two potential tampering instances. Why do you think these two specific transactions were targeted? Because the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of reports that come out right at 6:01. So why do you think these instances were targeted specifically?
Sign and trades.
Yeah.
Sign and trades will basically sound the sound the alarms here when you have complicated, sign and trades, and you can say that Chicago and New Orleans talked at the deadline, and maybe there was a structure of a deal. Mm-hmm. But when a sign and trade is your first transaction at 6 o'clock, that goes across the wire, it's automatically going to signal the alarm at the league office. Miami, Toronto's a little bit different. That came a little bit later, and there was already, talks at the trade deadline similar to what Lonzo. But yeah, that's the big thing. I said in one of those videos, I said, everyone's doing 35 and a 25, but the ones that do 40 or 45 are going to get caught. Mm-hmm. So now it's just a matter of the league kind of investigating and figuring out if either one of these 4 teams did something wrong. And there's no way I don't think that deals will fall through. I joked about it. I said, can you imagine if Kyle Lowry and Lonzo Ball go into back on the free agency and basically it's just Oklahoma City with cap space?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's basically what the situation, or they can maybe go back to their own team. But yeah, that's I think that's the big thing. I think everyone does it, and I think you have to. You have to have an idea as far as what the market is for certain players. But I do think the signing trades kind of as I said, kind of signal the alarms there.
Are you expecting any sort of penalty? And do you think that this investigation process is just to make their lives a little difficult so that other teams know, okay, you know what, they're going to really put us through the ringer here?
Well, I mean, there was penalty last year with Milwaukee when you lose a second-round pick and you get fined $50,000. I think if they find that there's evidence there, I think there'll be probably a significant financial penalty. There'll probably be, I don't know about a first-round pick. I think maybe multiple twos. The one thing, and we wrote about it today, I think it might have been Kevin Pelton. The one thing I don't like is when you forfeit a draft pick and it just goes to nowhere, right? So now there's only 59 picks. So why is a kid in college getting penalized?
That's a great point.
Why don't we do like a supplemental draft? Maybe that pick goes to somebody. Maybe whoever wins the NBA championship gets an extra second-round pick, and it's from that certain team there. So I'm not big into like forfeiting, only having 57 picks in the second round.
Yeah.
I think there's certainly a different way to do that.
I think that's a great point. I don't think a lot of people thought about it from that perspective, right? Now, after having spent about 20 years on the team side in the front office and 5 years on the media side with Yahoo and ESPN, what do you miss about being in a front office? And on the flip side, what do you like about working on the media side?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly miss free agency, the draft, trade deadline. I miss being part of a group, a team, as far as from a roster standpoint. I don't miss October to May. I don't miss the games. And you're lost 5 in a row, and you're like, you don't think another win's coming, and the stress there, especially if you think you're going to be good and you go on one of these losing streaks. So I don't miss any of that. From working in the media side, I love the hours that I can put in where I'm not sitting at a desk from 8 to 5 or 8 to 6. Like I always say, I'm going to get my 10 to 11 hours in, but it might be spread out throughout the day, and I'm home more. I get to see my kids more, which I never really did when I worked for a team. I can go to their sporting events, but I can work at night from 9 to 12 in my office. So that's probably the best part of it. I think, certainly working in the media, I think my networking is a lot stronger than maybe it was with the team. Certainly I'm no threat to any of the teams. I'm no threat to agents. I'm not looking for another job. I'm content as far as where I am. So I can, after a trade is made or a player signs, I can call the agent or I can call the team and I can say, hey, walk me through why you did it, in case I have to do TV or I have to write about it. And it just gives me a little bit of a different perspective.
Right. Well, last question for you, Bobby. Do you have a desire to eventually get back into front office?
You know what? I don't right now. I have a son who's a sophomore, and I have another one who's a 7th grade. And maybe when they get to college, so what's that, 5 years, down the road, when the post Nets, I thought that I would probably take a year off, do the media thing, and then jump right back into the team side. And I understand now why there's certain, John Gruden was in the media for a while, Jeff Van Gundy, there's certain people because the lifestyle is better, right? I mean, it's still work. I'm still working my butt off, but it's just a healthier lifestyle where I did my 20 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my 20 years, it kicked my rear end and stuff, mentally, physically, and everything. So I just think from from being at home and really, as I said earlier, really enjoying what I do, it would have to be kind of the perfect opportunity.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're getting a little bit of that work-life balance and getting to spend a little bit more time with your family. We all here at No Trade Clause love your work. You're one of the best who covers the NBA, so we appreciate it. Keep it up. Bobby, thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with us today. We really appreciate it, and best of luck to you going forward.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and you guys are doing a great job. I mean, this stuff is not the basic English language here, right? It's kind of like Greek mythology, and it's, but there is an appetite, right? There is
Absolutely.
an appetite. When I started doing this 6 years ago, and I went on social media and basically just used Twitter to break down deals and stuff like that, there was not many people doing that. And people love transactions. People love signings. People want to know how their roster is built, and they want to know, like, what can we get for Laurie Marketing? What can Chicago do? How are they hard? All these different things. And I think it's important to, kind of, I don't want to say dumb it down, but just make it easier for people to understand what the bird exception is and all these different, kind of rules here.
Yeah, it's one thing to understand it. It's another thing to explain it in layman's terms. And I think you do an excellent job of that, either with your tweets or also now with your videos that are coming out very quick after a transaction happens. So it's awesome. Bobby, thanks for all your work. Thanks for your time. Folks, thanks for tuning in to another session of the No Trade Clause. That's it for now. Peace.